Hey there, we're the Westlot Pirates and welcome to the show. We're here to share our thoughts on Northwestern athletics and college sports, with thoughts and analysis from the visceral to the statistical. We run our tailgate with the red pirate flag flying high above, as we give no quarter, especially the fourth. I'm Sam Walter.
I'm John Lacombe.
And I'm Eric Skos-Gaspo.
Well, hope you guys had a nice week off of football. I know I had a nice relaxing weekend for the most part. Did have a little bit of stress coming up with the field hockey with the Big Ten tournament going on. Great win Friday against Rutgers, and then ran into a Michigan team on Sunday. Michigan wins 1-0. First loss of the calendar year, first loss of the season for the Cats, but a situation where we're going into the tournament as the number 2 seed, so it doesn't hurt us per se. More that we know that us and Michigan are right there. I mean, the Cats beat Michigan in overtime in their house, lost 1-0 on a neutral site in Maryland, and now if everything breaks right, we could be seeing them again for the third time in the second round, but that's going to be at our house. So we'll just have to see what happens.
Yeah, I think it's a bummer for the team, obviously, because they have this dream season. They just completed, like we said, only the 4th undefeated regular season that any Northwestern team in any sport has ever put together. I think it's in some ways not unlike what Indiana football, the situation they're in right now, where they are so good and playing so well, and yet the margins are so thin because, like in the case of Indiana, like as well as they're playing, like if they lose at Ohio State, it effectively knocks them out of the Big Ten race. And it's like, again, like there are really, really good teams, and you can have had the kind of season that Northwestern's had up until now, and then still run into, right, like Sam said, this really good Michigan team. And they are looming again potentially at almost the exact same time of the week. Northwestern's going to start their title defense, with at Northwestern hosting this regional. They will face the winner of Vermont, Miami, Ohio at noon on Friday. But then on Sunday at noon Central, the winner of Michigan, Virginia is looming. And, figure on that being Michigan. And right, the Cats have played 2 razor-thin margin games against Michigan. And Michigan's obviously a really good defensive team. Then again, that's kind of the way the Cats have made their bones all year, just with scoring timely goals. A lot of times, with Maddie Zimmer making a play, Ashley Sessa, moment of brilliance. And that being enough because our defense is so good to push us through. Well, we might need to do that again. It really stinks, I know, for the team to lose that tourney title. They still have the regular season title. As Sam was kind of saying, realistically, it doesn't make much of a difference one way or another. We know who the top 2 seeds are in this tournament. One was going to be number 1. One was going to be number 2. North Carolina and Northwestern were never going to be in the same side of the bracket. Those teams are basically, as we've said all year, on a theoretical collision course to meet in the national championship. But for Northwestern, it's going to get real, really quickly. I think we can expect them to play really well and get by that Vermont, Miami of Ohio winner. But they might be looking at Michigan right off the bat. And those are the margins. Like, as they've had this unbelievable season, but to make the Final Four, they're going to have to potentially face their old nemesis a third time and get it done. In terms of TV, like this is NCAA. It's NCAA tournament now, so it's not going to be a Big Ten tournament game anymore. We will update online as we find out like the TV information and et cetera as the Cats move forward here. We'll keep you posted, but certainly if you can get out to either of these games, it's noon on Friday, noon on Sunday, both out on the Lakeside Field. So again, like I'm sure the students will show out, but if you have the ability to get out to one of those games, like definitely do it.
For sure. I mean, that it's been a magical season, and we have the opportunity to keep it going. This past Sunday notwithstanding. So, basketball also in full swing. Men went to Dayton, played tough.
Boy, was it! This game was like, this felt like March come early.
Yeah, I mean this was like intensity was at a all time. I'm not all time, but it was high. real high intensity game. Cats had
guys, like 13,400 fans in that Dayton arena,
It was
like going crazy for their Flyers. Oh boy,
Yeah.
what can I tell you? It's the most electric atmosphere in college basketball. I'm sorry, I'm not trying to be an a-hole, but like the broadcast was clearly like a home broadcast, and those guys did fine. Like they clearly were quite knowledgeable at Northwestern and quite complimentary about some of the players, etc. Definitely a lot of strong feelings for the home court.
Well, and honestly, that was more of a byproduct of like this game deserved better than the broadcast it got, and I think there's a lot of that. I think there's this larger theme of almost like a pivot that kind of hasn't happened for like in everybody's psyche right now, right? Where like football is football, whether you're ESPN or Northwestern Nation or anyone other than, I should put a big pin in that, other than the youngest generations and the current students who like switched to basketball mode in high gear the second this team tipped off in its first game. But this game was on ESPN Plus with, as Scuzz said, basically they just kind of like piped in the like local radio audio. The quality was really low. And as Scuzz was saying, this is two big time teams battling it out in front of 13,000 fans in a game where both teams seemed really good. And this is kind of the important thing that we wanted to get into right away. Because yes, we know Northwestern frittered away a big lead in the second half of this game. And yet there are like specific problems to point to. But I saw someone specifically online make a comment along the lines of like, this is the worst 5 or 6 minutes of Northwestern basketball I've ever seen. And I was like, sir,
I drove from Dallas.
Were you there for,
I drove from Dallas to Baylor for that Baylor game.
Yeah, I mean, were you there for the Kevin O'Neill years? Were you there for like the darkest seasons of the Carmody years, where there were some awesome seasons, but the lows were low, right? Were you there for some of the worst moments of the post-tournament, right? The first tournament, where there were times where we were just like, oh my gosh, Northwestern has no way to get a bucket.
I'll be honest. Were you there last year? Because the problem in this game is that Northwestern had a 10-point lead with 11 minutes left in the second half.
Which is right when I tuned in.
And 6 minutes later, they had scored 1 point in like an additional 1 point in those 6 minutes, and we're down 4. Those kind of scoring droughts have been, frankly, a common experience during the course of the Collins years, and they were few and far between the last 2 seasons, but we still had them at times. And it's interesting because I think a lot of people have centered on like the point guard issue. Like, why don't we have a point guard? We don't have a point guard. Their press destroyed us. Folks, it didn't. Go back and watch this game. Northwestern had, I think, 1 turnover in the backcourt against the press in the second half. Generally, they got the ball to the front court. The problem then was lazy passes. A ball goes into Nicholson, and Dayton just pounds it out of his hands immediately. Like, they were on top of us. There was a lack of intensity, and there was a lack of a playmaker with the ability to create his own shot, pull up and hit a deep 3. I mean, that's where we were missing Boo Buie. Not for the point guard piece of it. I mean, like, as you look at the play-by-play of this stretch, there's a brutal Nicky Bucket's turnover where he pushes the defender, and the announcers made this sound like, oh, you shouldn't have Nick Martinelli bringing the ball up. It's not what he's comfortable with. Whatever. Nick Martinelli does an awesome job bringing the ball up. He did it a ton last year. Like,
he can do whatever he wants.
Yeah,
as far as I'm concerned.
He pushed the defender off, and they called him for it, which like felt a little bit like ticky-tack, given he didn't fully extend his arm. But whatever, it was on the backside of the play. I didn't see a replay. There was another rough one where he ran the baseline on a dead ball where he wasn't allowed to run the baseline. But this was not a Northwestern sucks at basketball and collapsed. This was not a Northwestern doesn't have a point guard. They can't function. This was
100%.
Just a rough stretch where the offense went cold and you did not have the guy like Boo Booey was the last 2 years to create his own shot, pull up and hit a three. Like KJ Wyndham took guys to the baseline and like drove and created shots in this game, but dude's a freshman, and expecting him to do that in a high intensity situation in the back half of a game on the road right now in his second college game is a lot to ask. And so like, is this team going to look as good as it did last year with Boo? Probably not, but they have a ton to work with, and they are going to be so much fun this season.
And this is we're doing this without Brooks Barnheiser. I mean,
Right.
Barnheiser's still on the mend. Like he'll come back, and that senior leadership, you would expect to really jump in. Obviously, Ty Berry's still working his way back. He did not have a great game. 0 points in 20 minutes. Probably, I would imagine still coming back from his injury too.
It's interesting because he's making those super athletic rebounds where he leaps into the air and grabs the ball, with regularity, and then you're just not seeing him affect the game offensively. And I don't know if it's because he's not comfortable driving, and so they're guarding him super close, which is affecting his ability to shoot threes. But he just seems to be kind of a missing piece on the other end.
Right.
Two games in the season. I mean, let's
yeah. No,
well,
you're right.
Not be pulling the panic button.
Oh,
pushing
and the
panic button.
100%. And the other thing too is like Nick Martinelli is 2 games past halfway through college. Nick Martinelli has almost 2 full years of basketball. I mention this because this guy's averaging close to a 30 and 15 right now through 2 games. He's he just is coming out, like his mentality is basically like, well, I guess I'm the weapon and Brooks is out, so I'm going to work every night. And you know what? Good size, good bulk, a deep array of shots. I mean, I remember when it was like the Nicky buckets, like lefty hook. Now he has that and a ton of other stuff. 3 for 3 from 3. Like he did everything, and grabbed a ton of boards. And this is the big thing, because we get it that there's a lot of hand wringing and you got a chance. There's this feeling that, hey, this is a quad 1 win. You had a chance to pull it out. Dayton's obviously awesome, though. They looked so good in the second half of this game. Again, in front of a raucous, massive home crowd. But again, like we just keep coming back to the teams we've seen flail. This has the character of a team where there are so many new pieces and we're still figuring out how to put them all together. But I just found myself being like, anytime Sharavino, Wyndham, and Martinelli are on the floor, and these are 2 guys I had never seen, 3 guys, I'd never seen 2 of them until 2 games ago. And I was like, when Sharavino, Wyndham, and Martinelli are all on the floor together, that's more guys than a lot of teams are going to be able to handle. They're that dynamic. If you haven't watched this team yet, like, I get it, this was on ESPN Plus. Maybe a lot of you couldn't see it. Wyndham and Sharavino are special. They're going to be special. These are elite athletes with attacking mentality. Not elite for Northwestern in our history. Guys where you're like, holy crap. Sharavino did one play where I was like, you could convince me you can put a coin on top of the backboard and this guy can go grab it off. You just watch and you're like, whoa. He is going to destroy the rim a couple of times this season. And you watch these guys and like Wyndham is just so raw. He's played 2 games and you're watching out there and sometimes he's not operating within like the flow of the offense and a couple of other things. But like people talking about the point guard, you don't have to work hard to be like, well, KJ Wyndham will be our point guard eventually because he's just sick and ridiculous. And once he gets to the hang of it, I'm like, I don't know if that's true or not, but there's just so much potential here. And there are going to be growing pains and right. With Barry and whatever kind of situation he's in and waiting for Brooks to get back, there's going to be a lot of juggled lineups and figuring out like the best pieces, what the best crunch time squad is right now. But like the fact of the matter is there's a ton of talent on this team. And for so many of us who have fretted to be like, oh, but like what when this guy leaves? What when this guy leaves? You can go right now and you can be like, go ahead and fast forward 1 year from now. This team's going to have Martinelli, Wyndham, Sharavino, and the greatest recruiting class Northwestern's ever put together coming in. Like, there's a foundation here that we've never seen before. So that I just can't, my mood is not going to sour beyond a certain point. There's just too much potential and too many great things to watch.
I think at one point you had not just Sharavino and Wyndham on the floor, but also Jalen Leach, who was like, has looked pretty darn good. Also quite capable of handling the ball. And then I think Hunger and Blake. So like, because it's not just Barry coming, making his way back. Nicholson is also obviously working his way back into playing shape, etc. So the early season here is going to be a feeling out period. Just the fact that we were playing so much youth and had a 10-point lead in their barn. Made a, it was, you never felt like Northwestern was going to come back, but made a push towards the end. I mean, like for like the first three halves of the season, everybody has been talking about nothing but like the poise and how, natural and comfortable and awesome the freshmen look. And like, okay, yeah. So they had a bit of a bit of a moment in the second half. But this, it's all upside right now, John. I'm totally with you.
I'm just think about the fact from a Northwestern perspective. Right now, Northwestern just went to 2 straight tourneys, and everyone in the country is looking and being like, damn, Northwestern's got 2 really good-looking freshmen. And everyone in the country is also going, damn, Northwestern has the number 10 ranked recruiting class in the nation for this coming year. Like, we got a lot of guys. Like, this is the thing. It's like, this did not all go up in a poof of smoke. This is just a super exciting time to be a Northwestern fan. And there's just a lot here that's going to be a lot of fun to watch as it coalesces as we head into Big Ten play.
Yeah, and like, let's not forget, this is a very talented Dayton squad. We got a couple more games coming up this week. We got Tuesday night against UIC.
That's going to be a tough one.
Yeah. 6 o'clock tip. So I expect Welsh Ryan to be jumping. Then on Friday, 7 o'clock, we got Eastern Illinois coming into town. Probably not as tough as UIC, but getting into that rhythm, getting rolling. And I don't know when Barnheiser is going to be coming back. Hopefully not too long. But have you guys heard anything specific about him yet?
No, I mean, they continue to say, I think Collins gave a press conference today, we're recording Monday, and said that I think he continues to progress. I think I think they're very hopeful, and it sounds like it's all positive news and it's all positive steps forward. I don't think they have a definitive timeline, but it sounds like things are moving in the right direction for him.
And like, don't rush him back.
Right.
Yeah. Don't rush him back. You need him. You need him for conference play. That's where the rubber's going to meet the road. It's not like our non-con is just nothing but cupcakes, but it's not like this insane non-conference schedule. So
let's not interfere with Nick Martinelli's wooden campaign here. Let's
it seemed
all he has to do is keep 30 and 15 going for another 25 games or so. That's all we ask, Nick.
I bet he is, you'd love to have him back and with a game or two under his belt by that Illinois game on 12-6. I don't think that's likely. I think you're probably looking at like the Big Ten ACC Challenge against Georgia Tech on 12-15, and then DePaul on 12-21. I bet that's what they're targeting. But we'll see. I mean, it could be, Penn State, Purdue coming off of New Year's. So we'll see. So I mean, the Cats are going to have a really, Butler in Arizona, and then whoever they have in the second game of that Cactus Classic,
Mississippi State or UNLV.
Yep. So that's going to be a pair of tough games, and then at Iowa and Illinois that first week of December, and they're probably going to have to do that with the team they have today. So that'll be the first really big test for these young guys.
For all of you who maybe especially the older generation, the more football obsessed generations like we are, there's still a good chance that, again, given where this Dayton game was broadcast, you still haven't seen this team yet. You're going to have a lot of fun, man. You're going to have a lot of fun. The two, Wyndham and Sharavino, are super exciting, and they're super young, and you're going to get to watch them show out and grow and fit with all the battle-tested veterans we have on this team. It's going to be a fun season.
One other thing to mention, we do have tickets available to some of these games. If you go to your podcast app of choice, leave us a 5-star review, take a screenshot of a 5-star review, you write a 5-star review, and send it to us at Westlaw Pirates, and you'll get your name put into a drawing for an upcoming game. So go ahead and do that. Love to see 5-star ratings come flying in. That really helps us get our name out, expand our reach even more.
You're not helping us. You're helping other Northwestern fans find this content.
Yeah. If we can gently prod you all to do this, we know so many of you listen to this podcast. If you would be so kind as to take a second out of your time and just go do this, it would help us. And like you guys said, help other Northwestern fans, and you might get some free tickets out of it.
So yeah, send us a screenshot, westlawpirates@gmail.com, Twitter, Facebook, at Westlaw Pirates, of your new 5-star review, and that would be getting yourself into the drawing. If you or a loved one is seriously injured by someone else's negligence, hire Kent Simpson of the Simpson Law Group. After over a decade prosecuting murder cases in Chicago, Simpson opened his own firm focused on wrongful death and personal injury cases. He specializes in car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and other transportation accidents, as well as construction accidents, medical negligence, slip and falls, product liability, and more. Millions recovered for clients. No fee unless he wins. The Simpson Law Group. Compassion, empathy, and vigorous advocacy. Go to simpsonlawgroup.com or call 312-332-2107 for a free consultation. And go Cats. Moving on. No football this past weekend, as I mentioned earlier. We've got the first of our 2 Wrigley games coming up on Saturday against, Ohio State.
They say it's homecoming.
Theoretically, yeah. Homecoming in a baseball stadium against the number 2 team in the country. Cool. But, because we don't have a game to recap, it's a bye week, we can kind of take stock. Do we need to spend too much time previewing this game? I don't know that we do.
No, I agree. Sammy, you and I were both on Eric Boggs' podcast, the Ohio podcast, talking about it earlier. And yeah, there's really not too much. This is the number we predicted in the summer. This would be the number 1 defense in the country. They are the number 1 defense in the country. They're definitely the best defense in the nation. It's probably not that close. Indiana's up there, but Ohio State's, been probably even more battle tested. They're good at everything. Everything. Which position do you want? They're top 5 in the nation. Defensive line, linebackers, secondary. The Jim Knowles is on this insane stretch that we talked about in the summer. I think it's 9 straight years across 3 teams that he has made his defense better than it was the year before every single year. It will be statistically impossible to beat that feat next year because
if he stays at Ohio State.
If he stays at Ohio State, right, unless he moves on to the NFL or wherever else. But this will be the number 1 defense in the country this year. They're number 1 in scoring and total defense, I think, right now. They're ludicrous. And, look, we love our team. There is so much statistical evidence to suggest we will score 7 or less points in this game. I could just drown you in data points. Every team they have played remotely close to us in a statistical ranking offensively, and for the record, every single one of these teams I'm referring to is better than us statistically, has scored between 0 and 7 points. That includes Big Ten teams like Purdue and I think Iowa and Michigan State. It includes Akron in the non-con. And at least like Western Michigan, who statistically is actually a pretty good offense this year, scored 0 points against them. You can look at Purdue last week. They just played Purdue. Purdue had 0 points. They should have had 6. They missed 2 chippy field goals. It's just, this is what we're looking at. there is probably not a single betting person who is betting us to break 7 points in this game. And that's just, it is what it is. So with that out front, I think everything else you might be looking for in this game would be a lot of cool individual matchup stuff, a lot of pride stuff, stuff related to our defense. Sammy, you and I talked about that. I mean, for like a corner like Josh Fussell, this is a freshman. He is starting against Ohio State receivers in Wrigley. This is a huge game for him. I'm sure it's very personal for him.
He's an Ohio kid.
Right. He's an Ohio kid from Cincinnati. Like, this is a huge moment for him. We obviously know like guys like Antosaka, like a Jalen Pate, who had a huge game against Purdue. This is an opportunity for them to test themselves against one of the best offenses in the country, right? We hope Xander's back. It sounds very iffy. Braun was very kind of non-committal on this. But if not, again, Grayson Metz and Mac Uline, like they're going against the best of the best. I'm sure for these guys, it's a huge deal. Obviously, anytime you're playing Ohio State, it's a huge deal. But the spread on this one is, I think, 30 points, and it's 30 points for a reason. You know,
one of the exciting opportunities that the Cats have, unlike some of the past years when we've played just an exceptional Ohio State team, is that Ohio State's had a lot of problems on O-line. They were down to their third string tackle a couple games ago. I don't know if they've had some healing there, but our defensive line should have some opportunities. The challenge is that Will Howard is extremely good at getting the ball out fast. The running backs are great, so you always got to worry about them. But there might be some opportunities, and I think on the other side of the ball, our offense has struggled, and this is frankly just not the game that you get right against another opponent, right? Like hopefully they can continue to improve again, like from what they saw against Purdue, but Lausch is going to have very little time. It's just how good this Ohio State defensive line is, and then they're good on the back end. You're not going to have coverage breakdowns like Ohio State has had in years past.
I mean, they're literally the best. Yeah,
I think you hit the nail right on the head there with improvement. I mean, it is brutal to go from Purdue to Ohio State defensively. I mean, Purdue is one of the worst teams in the country. Ohio State is the best. So, can you quantify growth?
It's going to be really hard to quantify growth just given the caliber of the opponent. But look, let's call this out right here. Like 0 false start penalties would be an improvement.
Yeah.
0.
Sure.
I'm not going to say holding because they're probably going to be, you know how the refs get in these.
This defensive line
matchups.
is it's probably the best D line.
So like 0 false starts, 0 delay of games, like no situational weirdness, avoid turnovers, like those things would be signs of growth 100%. Like, hey, I'd love it for the Cats to take a couple deep shots. I said this before the Penn State game. Like that's how you attack Ohio State. You got to throw it deep on them. We got a couple of fast receivers. You never know. You might get some nice field position and have an opportunity to score some points that way. Like, and then if the defense is able to pull together some sacks and some pressure on Howard, get him a little bit uncomfortable. Like those are the opportunities for some excitement and for a game that's closer than people expect.
But I think primarily the biggest thing that we want to come away from this game is healthy.
Yeah.
Because coming up after this game, we've got games at Michigan and against Illinois that if we win both of them, we're going bowling.
Which is why I will bet you $100 we don't see Xander Mueller in this game.
Yeah,
sure,
I would.
Sure.
I mean, that makes perfect sense to me.
If we win one of them, there's a good chance we go bowling.
It's like we joked about this with Eric Boggs on his podcast, Sam, and it's like we're not trying to be cynical. It's just neither us nor Ohio State particularly want to play this game like a ton. Ohio State plays Indiana the week after. If you ask Ohio State fans what their goals are for this game, they'll be like, it's for Will Howard. Basically, like they're like, we saw the Iowa game last year. We're worried about the turf. We just want Will Howard getting through this game. That's their goal, right? and they're the team that's expected to win by a lot. Both of us are looking past this game. And yes, there's like pageantry and everything, but this is a game where the spread is 30 points and both of the teams involved have very big goals that start the week after this game. It is what it is. And that's the thing, right? Like, I think our goal is to get through this one healthy, growth if possible. It's funny, I was thinking back, because basically, I mean, again, Northwestern Nation's all very realistic right now of this situation. Like I said, all statistical evidence, basically every stat that exists, suggests we're going to score between 0 and 7 points in this game. That's every metric that is available. But I think if you look at what Northwestern fans are thinking, being like, man, this feels like we really don't have a shot in this one, you have to go back quite a ways to find another game where Northwestern fans really felt like that. I mean, the Indiana game we were really worried about, but Northwestern was within 3 in that game late before Indiana kind of pulled it away. And I think we were all coming to realize at that point, man, this Indiana team is just way, way better than anyone thought they were going to be. But before that, you have to go all the way back to Penn State the previous year, where I think we were all like, uh-oh, this Penn State team is coming in. They're an absolute monster. Their defense is the best defense in the country, et cetera, et cetera. The irony being, that game was 10-10 at the half, and Northwestern fans were super excited about that game. So, not saying that it's impossible, but even that game was a game where, we felt very outclassed defense to offense, certainly for the entire second half of that game. And I suppose if you're looking for some miracle scenario, it would be not unlike the Penn State game, right? Braden Bruss forces that fumble at the start of the game. We pick up an early 3 points, string together one decent touchdown drive at the end of the half, play some ungodly defense, and that took us through a half of that football game, right? Again, like, it's almost impossible to you're not skiing a double black diamond here, you're skiing off a cliff. Like, it's that hard. So,
and hey,
right.
You know what? I would be thrilled to come back here next week and just eat it. If we're like, let's be wrong.
100%.
Like, let's come out and like look good, and I will gladly eat this.
I do
even
think
for like a quarter or half or whatever.
Yeah, we haven't talked about this much on the podcast this year, but I've had this conversation with a lot of people, and I think that the tagline I kind of use is like, it's kind of stunning that Ohio State and Northwestern are playing the same sport. And I bring this up because I think there's a lot of, especially John, you like to allude to the folks that were, minted during the Rose Bowl and Citrus Bowl years, and folks like us that grew up during Randy Walker and like the last second comebacks and the wild things that like there's a corner of that of folks from that era on the football side that blowout losses are the thing that drive them insane. If Northwestern loses close, okay, like, it sucks, and maybe we were dumb or did dumb things, etc. But like, blowout losses are totally unacceptable. And I think like that is fair to a degree, but we've entered a world where, I mean, by all accounts, Ohio State spent, I'll say at least, because we don't actually know, at least $20 million constructing this roster. And I say that to just like the very upper crust of the sport is operating at a totally different level. Like, the top 15 to 20 true blue blood programs are operating at a different level than the rest of the 130 teams in college football. And it really manifests in a game like this, where, I mean, Ohio State has, over the course of time, they spared no expense. But there's a much more direct way to access and impact the talent on the field now. And that is a world that even most Northwestern fans, I don't think, would want to go to that level, in terms of what we think matters for this school and the ethos of this program and who we believe our identity is, right? And I don't know. I say that from my own perspective, I guess, as I shouldn't, cast that more widely. But the point being is like, and I'm not trying to say Northwestern doesn't belong in the field or anything like that. Like any given Saturday, crazy stuff happens. Vanderbilt beat Alabama, for God's sake, a few weeks ago. So like insane things happen in college football. It's why we love this sport. But it is important to note that like the infrastructure for a long time back in the 70s when there were no scholarship limits, the Ohio States and the Michigans, they had everything, and it was near impossible because of the depth and the talent and the power that they had. You introduce scholarship limits and you get the 90s and the aughts, and then the 20 teens, I guess, where you see a bit more, you see less spread between the haves and the have-nots, and NIL and the transfer portal. I think we've been pretty consistently on the record that we support both of those things in terms of the machinations of the way the sport works and the amount of money and power and influence that coaches and administrators and schools have had, and it's been imbalanced. This is bringing balance to the force, if you will, but this is a side effect, is that the institutional structure, the infrastructure of the sport is wildly different from what it was 5 years ago.
100%. And Bill kind of making kind of an important point relative to Ohio State on the back of that, but also in the nature of kind of steering us to a place that I know you want to get to today, Scuzz. One big thing about this relative to Ohio State, because I think a lot of people are like, well, like, right, post-NIL, like, right, again, $20 million, they've constructed this team. But I think a lot of you are also aware that, like, Ohio State has always been, like, in the old system, they were stacked with talent too. And I think particularly on defense, you can look and you'll be like, right, like, this is a team that has very much been constructed with NIL dollars. But on the defensive side of the ball, and this is something that certainly is a very new adjustment for us, and I think it's a new adjustment for a lot of you too, is on the defensive side of the ball, Ohio State's unbelievably well coached. Even if all of the 4- and 5-star guys that they have on that defense right now were 3-star guys, it would still be an awesome defense. They don't make mistakes. The identity is super clear. Knowles is an awesome DC. You have all these guys that are stars, but they're not out there taking chances. They're not out there running around like chickens with their heads cut off. We talk about Denzel Burke, a guy at Ohio State. Like, the classic image of a guy like Denzel Burke of 5-10 years ago is a guy who's like looking like an NFL draft guy in raw potential while like passes get over his head like all the time. Like, that was the Ohio State way. That's just not who they are right now. They're so well coached on defense. It's such a clear identity and they don't make mistakes. And on the opposite side of the ball is this Northwestern offense that, as we have established, is just, we never seem to be able to put everything together at the same time. Something's always going wrong in some phase at some point. And it could be a million different things, but it's everything from just like guys making individual errors to this just trick we've had establishing just a long-term offensive identity. And like, I know that's like I said, Scuzz, like, that's a theme that I know you want to get to, because again, like, that's the great X factor here. There's all the NIL, there's all the time, there is all of the talent, the raw talent. But then there's the other piece that just like, they know exactly who they are on that side of the ball. And on the flip side, we are a team very much still figuring out who we are.
Yeah, I've brought this up a couple times. We alluded to this conversation last week of, getting a little bit more, long range with the offense and the coaching, et cetera. And obviously, Zach Lujan has been a divisive figure, not even divisive figure, just like a disappointing figure for Northwestern fans this year. So much hype coming into the year. Certainly, yours truly was somewhat responsible. I mean, I thought this guy was going to be incredible. I haven't looked at.
No need to take the bullet by yourself. Like I 100% was there,
Yeah,
right
I
there
mean,
with you.
and I haven't gone back and looked at the Northwestern offensive stats, but I thought it was pretty compelling that the talent we'd have on the field, particularly the speed across the board, having a veteran quarterback and Mike Wright would allow us to improve on last year's performance as a really strong running team with this wizard at the controls with his schemes, etc. And it's not been to be for a lot of different reasons. And I think it's funny, like the way this season has progressed. That section in the middle of Washington, Indiana, blip for Maryland, followed by Iowa, Wisconsin. I mean, going 1-4 over five weeks in the middle of the season, I think has just left a lot of people really, really down. Our friend Tom McGrath was asking us, like, am I crazy? Like, why am I so disappointed? Like, were the expectations out of bounds? Like, what is going on? Because I mean, high level, you step back to 30,000 feet. We're one win away from potential bowl. We all said going into the year, like 6 wins is what good looks like this season. We're at 4 with 3 winnable games remaining on our schedule.
Two.
Oh, I'm sorry, games. 2 winnable games. Yes, I forgot that forgot we only have 3 left. 2 winnable games remaining on our schedule. So, I mean, we can. It's unlikely that we get to that 6, but we're not living in a 3-9 world. We're not living in a 2-10 world. But the offense, is a huge question mark, and it's been an issue for years,
a really long time,
years. And it's always been a when are we going to get there? And it's 2 different head coaches now. We're on our 3rd athletic director, and Braun and Mark Jackson are quite early in their tenures to paint their offensive philosophy in stone. But as fans, we are constantly looking for the upside and getting excited and then getting disappointed year after year after year. And the thing that has jumped up to me this year that I kind of wanted to bring up and just bat around a little bit is kind of like, what was the plan? And what makes me ask that question is very simply that we have not seen Mike Wright since the end of the EIU game in week 3. And with all the up and down that Jack, and this is not a segment about should Jack Lausch be our quarterback or not. I'm just wondering, as a fan who wants to see this team get to 6 wins this year, we thought at the beginning of the year that Mike Wright, and I'm not saying I'm saying like the coaching staff thought he was the best option to win games. And we've stepped away from that. And obviously none of us are at practice. We don't know what's going on. I mean, dude could maybe be hurt. We understand from folks that cover the team that he travels with the team. He's involved. He's engaged. Like, he's there. But even in the press conference this week, Braun talked about, the rotation, like getting Holinsky into the game last week, and said, yeah, if we see an advantage, we'll, of bringing Ryan in, we'll take advantage of that. And I'm like, can we address the elephant in the room? Like, what happened to what I thought was plan A at the quarterback position? And again, this is not a knock on Lausch. I'm just wondering.
It's just so crazy. Like, I mean, we joked that on voting day, Mike Wright put up a nice tweet that was like, go out and vote. And in the tweet, he's in like Northwestern gear. And we were like there were people in Northwestern Nation taking that as a sign, being like, oh, that's a positive indicator, because like up since the Miami of Ohio game, he'd only tweeted twice. Both were about Vanderbilt football. And this is not like whatever. Like, you can run your social media account however you want. Like, this is a positive or negative. It's just like literally we didn't know. We're like, where is he?
Why haven't we seen him? Like, if nothing else, take some pressure off Jack. Give him a break. Let him. Bring out a guy. Like, my whole premise coming into the year was Mike Wright is not going to have the struggles holding onto the ball or reading the defenses, because he's been out there. This is a guy that started for the better part of 3 seasons at Vanderbilt. And no, I'm not suggesting that he's, Jalen Milroe or going to be a Heisman Trophy winner or anything of that nature. I'm quite confident that the guy can contribute. And again, it takes me back to the beginning of the season, just wondering what was the plan. And I think the plan was probably you hire Zach Lujan and you get Mark Gronowski with him. And that's not a knock on any of the quarterbacks on the roster today. It just but I do think it frames better what we've experienced. And I bring this up again, not to shit on anybody on the team. I think all these guys are doing their damnedest, and I love the commitment to Lausch that the coaches have had. I mean, we praised that coming off of that tough Washington game. It helps me step back and reevaluate the expectations going into the year. And I'm not saying this to defend the coaches or say hey, everybody, you should be less disappointed than you were, but it helps me come to grips with what has been a very confusing and disappointing experience watching this team this year.
Yeah, to me, I think there are two categories. There's the quarterback specific thing, and then there's the Lujan scheme piece.
Yeah.
And that part I want to get to in a second, but I mean, to everything you're saying about the quarterback piece, I almost feel like it's like some situation where you're driving on a road and then a rock comes flying up and cracks your windshield and you swerve, and now you swerved off the road and now you're on a different road. And then something else happens and now you're at a fork in that road and you do another thing and another thing. And then sooner or later you're we are on such a completely different path than wherever it was that we started that I can't even really. And there are from a quarterback perspective, there are kind of 4 key characters here, right? Brendan Sullivan, Mark Gronowski, Mike Wright, and Jack Lausch. And to everything Scuzz was saying, it's almost difficult to try to go back in time and weave through all these different moments, because clearly Sullivan at some point was, I would say, given a vote of no confidence or some form of that, basically being we are not guaranteeing anything to you.
Yeah.
And if anything,
I mean, not at some point. I mean, that was clearly during spring ball.
Right. And then, and remember,
I think it's important that I'm quite confident. I mean, let's remember he left Northwestern to be the presumed backup quarterback at Iowa. This is not a you're not going to play, you should leave. I just think it's really important and again, Braun hasn't said one way or the other, but I'm quite confident it was not a you need to leave because you're not going to play here.
Oh, no. Well, they certainly didn't run him off.
Yeah.
I just think that it's they didn't give him the vote of confidence of a guy who, in his mind, he's I've played really meaningful snaps over the past 2 years that Northwestern fans greatly appreciate. What a warrior.
Well, and there was, I forget which game it was, but one of our games this year, the announcers were referring to Jack Lausch winning the starting job coming out of spring ball. And I was that is not what occurred.
No, it didn't.
Yeah, no. Well, and it's funny though, the reason Brendan Sullivan, I think partly is such a key character here is on the road that everyone thought we were on at that time, the feeling, I think, certainly among the coaches, but amongst scheme and where we were going was that there are other guys who are at least as good fits as Brendan Sullivan is now. And I think you can look to all the way through Northwestern and where Northwestern has ended up, like I was saying, all these different twists and turns and all these roads where it's hard to know even where we started. In a lot of ways argue that Brendan Sullivan would be the best fit in the current thing that Northwestern has, right? Which is we got a bunch of speed and the ability to run read option, and Brendan Sullivan is central casting. He is Mr. Read options. So you're telling me you need a guy to hold on to the football.
During the Iowa UCLA game on Friday night, the announcers quipped that they talked to Tim Lester, the offensive coordinator. He said something, or maybe it was Ferentz, but said something like, yeah, even if we didn't want him to run, he would still run. We would not be able to stop him from running. And I almost fell off my chair.
Right. Every Northwestern fan's nodding, right? And of course, like we've been dealing with the exact opposite set of problems over the past couple of weeks. But again, like to discuss his point, that's all hindsight. That's 20 turns on the road ago, right? And I think the belief was, right, that Sullivan was going to leave, Lausch was going to be available, but to your point, like Lujan comes in and Gronowski very likely comes with him, which gives you a big veteran button pusher right off the bat. And I really believe that they probably thought they had a really good shot at that happening. And it didn't happen. And then I think the thought was, well, Mike Wright's going to come in. And again, we don't have to rehash this. We know how this all played out. I think with Wright, like, then you get to a point where it's like, right, like, do you put him back in? One of the really hard truths that I kind of realized and I was thinking about a lot with the Purdue game, because a lot of people are like, well, you see Ryan Helinski in that game. Where the heck was Mike Wright? One of the really, and I get this sounds ridiculous and possibly counterintuitive, but one of the issues with putting Mike Wright in against Purdue is Mike Wright probably throws for 350 yards and 3 touchdowns against Purdue in that game. And again, I realize how stupid that sounds, but baked into that is then Mike Wright's going to be your guy the rest of the way. And now what's the situation? Then what's going to go on? And I'm not saying that Mike Wright, like, then you might have a situation where Mike Wright could potentially come out and throw 3 or 4 picks. He has the propensity to freelance, and that's an issue. I don't believe those issues would have been a problem against Purdue just because there were wide open guys against Purdue and just things to be had. And I think he just feasts in that game. And then are we better off? I have no idea. I can't tell you one way or another. We're just so far afield from whatever the original plan relative to quarterback was at this point that it's hard to even know.
I do think there's a, and again, if I can draw a thread through it, and I do think it's really important to separate all the confusing choices that have been made inside the 5-yard line, on both ends of the field, the weird time things, the weird like situational things. Put all that aside. That is a separate issue. That all falls squarely at the feet of Braun and Lujan, and you hope, best case, that's just like a, young coaches in their, not first rodeo, but like just making some young coach mistakes, and they're going to figure that out. Like you hope that's what that is. Worst case, it's a fundamental lack of understanding of situational football, which those guys understand situational football. They've won national championships.
That's absolutely not the case.
It's not a problem, but it's a decision. It's when you're on a 40-second clock and you're trying to make decisions, sometimes you do the wrong stuff, especially when you're reeling. We talked about this with Purdue last week. Like, they made a ton of really questionable choices because their coaching staff has zero confidence in their own decision-making and their own process. And when you get in that, when you're reeling like that, you grasp for straws. And I 100% think that Braun and Lujan have been grasping for straws at moments and have just missed the mark. You got to put that aside from this, the scheme and what Northwestern is trying to do. It has been strange to me all year with the personnel on Northwestern, and again, particularly the quarterbacks and the running quarterback component that we've been begging Lausch to run. If Lausch won't run, why won't you put in Mike Wright? These are the questions that have been going through my head for weeks. And it comes back to something, John, you talked about coming off the Washington game, that you can see Lausch trying to run the scheme, trying to run the system as it's meant to be run. It was one of the biggest problems in the Duke game, is that Wright struggled to do that. And in that world where you thought you would have quarterback A, you didn't get quarterback A. You went with quarterback B. Quarterback B's not able to run the scheme that you want to run. Are you focused on trying to get 6 wins this year, or are you focused on trying to build this team and your scheme and your identity in the right way to springboard into next year? And I can already hear the people reacting to this comment, like, "Oh, you guys are soft on Lujan. It's a Pollyannish." Like, I'm just calling it like I see it, because nothing else makes sense. This dude won 2 FCS national championships. He is not a moron. He understands football, folks.
The other piece of it too is like, you can say everything you're saying and not necessarily know that there is and not necessarily know that the Zach Lujan piece of this is the right piece. Like, I mean, it's like,
yeah, for sure.
We're not greening, because this is the other piece of this. All these quarterback twists and turns that we've gone in a vacuum, that would be one thing. But part A, the quarterback piece, isn't happening on its own. It's happening right next to part B, the schism between everything Lujan has run up until he's gotten to Northwestern, and the personnel he has at Northwestern, and the degree to which they fit with that scheme or potentially some other scheme. And this is the thing that I think for a lot of Northwestern fans definitely burns, because you can go all the way back to Mike Bajakian. And we've talked about this before on the pod, but when Mike Bajakian was first hired, Scuzz did this unbelievable deep dive on Bajakian and all of the different places he'd been and all of the different schemes, when the sad reality was probably that Fitz saw the way that Bajakian was pounding the ball with a 250-pound running back at BC and was like, that's what I want us to be. Come in and make us that. And then that colossally did not work. And this is the thing with Lujan. A lot of people have talked about the moving up to FCS, and you can't have an FCS guy moving up to FBS. We flatly reject that.
Yeah, absolutely wrong.
Please see Exhibit A, the University of Indiana that is 10-0 with a bunch of FCS coaches and a bunch of FCS players, I might add.
Right. So it's like that is not it. What may be a real issue, though, is this set of personnel at Northwestern is just totally different than the kind of thing that Lujan was working with at South Dakota State.
I thought all the speed and the skill sets of the quarterbacks and the relative strength of the running backs at Northwestern portended a run-first scheme, which aligned 100% with what Lujan has done in the past. However,
and, I mean, that's what they were saying too. They were saying, like, off the bat, run first. But every press conference leading up to the season.
But in the past, Cam Porter is a small version of the running backs that Lujan was deploying at South Dakota State.
Of the running back stable.
Yes.
This is the key thing, is like, you look at Cam Porter and you'd be like, okay, yes, we have Cam Porter, and as Scuzz is saying, he's a smaller version. But Cam Porter's our primary, and as we all know, an injury-prone primary back. At South Dakota State, that's the type of running back, is Cam Porter or bigger.
Yep.
So it wasn't just that South Dakota State at the FCS level had an advantage at the offensive line over just about every one of their opponents. They were just a very good team, not like an absolutely like Alabama kind of thing, but they had a clear advantage, like at the offensive line.
Not in the first 2 years when he, increased their output by 25%, but point remains.
So I mean, like they also had 2 running backs who are both in the NFL right now, Pierre Strong and Isaiah Davis, who are both mountains of human beings.
Yeah.
Okay. And for a period of time had both of them. Okay. And then they had Gronowski. So they were hammering teams. And one of the points
physically,
physically,
and that's the disconnect, is that it's a different style of running
exactly
that has not fit with the Northwestern personnel, and
and
all the talk preseason about adjusting the scheme to meet players where they are, et cetera, like, we have seen signs of that. It has not taken, but we've seen signs of it,
and like we put up a stat, and this is the stat that I alluded to on last week's pod that we wanted to put up, that it's like, for point of reference to the kind of football that Lujan's used to running, you can look at all of Gronowski's game logs for like the past 2 months and stack them right up to Jack Lausch's. Lausch's, and you look at, it's like 14 games, or it was at the time we put it up. 7 games for Gronowski, 7 games for Lausch. Of those 14 games, 4 of the top 5 passing yard performances are Jack Lausch. And he's like, you can look and basically be like, South Dakota State just doesn't want to throw the ball that much. They run with Gronowski, but they're trying to put up 300 to 350 rush yards a game across all of their backs and Mark Gronowski and another quarterback who's even more of a running quarterback than Gronowski is. They just want to steamroll you. And that's the thing. I mean, it gets to that point of like, are we scheming for the offense we wished we had, or are we putting together the best scheme for the guys that we actually have? And that's the thing. I'm not saying that I have like the perfect answer here, but it's a hell of a problem to be working out at the exact same time as you're dealing with all the quarterback stuff that we've talked about. It's like, and the recipe for all of the problem A, like all of these column A problems and all of these column B problems at the same time, what that recipe creates is the 131st ranked offense in the nation out of 134 teams. Yep. That's where you end up. And again, flailing for an identity and being like, what is the thing we are pushing towards here? The
hot button topic that people love to shout about this during games is that Northwestern needs to fire Lujan and move on from him before next year. I think there is like zero chance of that
not happening. No.
Yeah, there's no outcome in the next 3 games that could cause that to occur, in my opinion, on the field. I could be wrong, and I said earlier in the season, like, look, we wait until the end of the year and we look at this and maybe we say, hey, this guy isn't cut out for FBS. And when I say that, what I mean is, if he can't stop, making the weird play calls that don't make any sense, or the situational mistakes, if he can't teach the guys, some of that is stuff that you just don't figure out in your first, the season is 3 months or 4 months. It's a compressed 4-month period. You have, with the exception of a bye week, right? Like when you finish with Washington and you're playing, or when you finish with Indiana and you're playing Maryland 6 days later, you're not installing new offensive concepts because your prior concepts were struggling. Like, you're just focusing on, okay, this is what Maryland looks like. Here's how we game plan. Here's how we work it. During the bye week, you tinker. You maybe try to bring in some things you didn't have before. This is why getting a bowl is so important, because you get those extra 15 practices to install new stuff that typically shows up for the following season. Spring ball, same thing. So that, like, it is very hard to fathom a situation here where Lujan is relieved of his duty. And again, like I made this comment 2 or 3 weeks ago, and I still believe it's true. Like, this is not the same as when we brought in Jim O'Neill and he absolutely face planted with a super talented team. That was a dude that had not been successful anywhere, being asked to run a scheme unlike any scheme he had ever run anywhere else previously, with good players under a defensive minded head coach who had had a ton of success at this school. And he was the worst defense ever. We're the worst offense in the Big Ten, but like, that kind of fits the mold of what Northwestern has been for a long time. Not being the absolute worst in college football, but like, and yes, we're worse than we were last year, but there is no world where he gets relieved of his duties. And like, people, you can wail and gnash your teeth all you want about it. I can't help being pragmatic and saying, like, look, this is the bed we're in for at least another year. Let's see what can happen and see what we can do with it.
I think too, like, for all the hand wringing about quarterback, which is totally founded, totally get it. We get it. And again, like, we're on the record, like, we love Jack Lausch again, like, and this is so much of that is with our heart, because great family and local kid, and he's a great guy and he's working so hard. And again, like, that's not a panacea. Like if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. We want to see it work. But for all the hand wringing, the thing that I'm thinking about the most is, like, again, next year we can assume we're going to have an offensive line that certainly does not enjoy a clear advantage over its competition week to week, with a primary number one back who everyone agrees is Joe Hyman. And that is in no way Zach Lujan's experience up to this point. In no way, shape, or form is that basis for your running attack what he's been working with. And is he the man to unlock it? Can he make that pivot? Is he able to adjust and find a new path? Or is there someone else who's just a better fit for what our personnel is? And again, I don't have the answer to that question. I want it to be Zach Lujan. I want Zach Lujan to get it figured out. But at the end of the day, like, that's a call that Braun's going to have to make. And I'm with Scuzz. I think that he goes into next season and Braun gives him more time to put together pieces, etc. And then we go from there and we see how it works out. But again, none of us really know. None of us really know, other than David Braun, what his plan is going to be at the end of the season, and we're going to have to wait and see.
Great conversation, and it's a conversation that will obviously continue as we finish out this regular season, regardless of what happens this weekend against Ohio State, regardless of what happens against Michigan and Illinois to round out the season, whether we go bowling or not. I mean, this is going to be an extended conversation, and a conversation that we've had with our listeners, conversations we've had with each other, conversations we've had with our friends. This is, this isn't going away, I guess is what I'm saying. Right. So I think we can leave that conversation for now. And like I said, we don't need to go too deep on what we're going to see this Saturday. I think we all have a sense on what that is. So let's take a look back last weekend.
Really quickly before we just get off, I do want to say, like, for everyone who's watching, because you're like, man, you guys are being super bleak about this Ohio State game. I mean, we're not lying to you. There are things I'm super excited to see, though. We talked about all those defensive things. Like, again, for a guy like a Theron Johnson, that's probably the guy that I highlight more than anyone else. We know about those two horrible decisions he made after the whistle. We've also talked about how he could not be more ascendant. He's playing at an all Big Ten level right now. And
evolving to Therizard?
Therizard, that's right.
Thermander?
Right. He's evolved all the way up to Therizard. That huge game for him. This is NFL tape for him. This is draft tape for him. This is all those NFL scouts looking now and being like, okay, so here are some future NFL receivers. How are you going to handle that? You've clearly developed so much. Now, how are you going to handle this? That's super exciting.
Not just future NFL receivers. I mean, He's got an opportunity to go up against like a legitimate potential number one draft pick in Jeremiah Smith.
Right. So, I mean, it's like there's nothing but major opportunities. And hey, as we record on a night where Anthony Walker and Malik Washington both had big games for the Miami Dolphins, like, Pro Cats is always at the next level. Yeah. And again, there's nothing that makes us more excited than seeing guys really develop and start to put themselves in that conversation. And he's not the only one. There are a bunch of other guys like that too. So really excited for those kind of guys. And I think that's probably the single biggest thing I'll be excited for on Saturday.
So looking back at this past weekend's games, starting on Friday, Iowa drops to UCLA 20-17.
I'm so happy that I was out and be like, you know what? Iowa's winning out, and everyone should just prepare themselves that Brendan Sullivan's going to go 5-0 down the stretch. What a kiss of death! I just couldn't. Iowa couldn't wait to face plan after that.
Man,
don't look now. UCLA has won 3 in a row.
So this is crazy. So in this game, both teams had 3 turnovers. Iowa only had 2 penalties for 20 yards. UCLA had 9 penalties for 84 yards, but they ran the ball down Iowa's throat. 5.4 yards per rush. Jay Higgins did go out with injury on the Iowa side, but Iowa could not run on UCLA at all. UCLA totally shut them down. dared them to throw. Jacob Gill at his best game as a college football player, 6 receptions for 138 yards. Awesome game from Jacob Gill, former Wildcat. But I always couldn't do enough. And then and like a lot was made. Sullivan went out late in the third quarter, I think. He'd just been kind of bruised and battered. And Iowa was quote unquote down to like their 5th string quarterback, because I guess they had a couple other guys get injured last week or during the course of practice this week. And they just couldn't overcome. But like, man, UCLA, like the comeback.
Yeah, good for them. I mean, honestly, like 4 wins for them already feels like they're playing with house money. I think everyone's applauding the work that they've done so far. They could have turned in a 1-11 this season, and people really wouldn't have blinked. They have a brand new coach and the worst travel schedule in the country.
3 in a row and 2 on the road at Nebraska, beating
and
Iowa. What?
And we're like, we'll get to it later, but I mean, like, they're licking their chops for this week. They got another winnable game.
So Saturday, Oregon just does what Oregon does, 39-18 over Maryland.
Yep. One game closer to the end of the Loxley era, I would say, is where we're heading.
Yep. And Oregon's the number 1 team in the country for a good reason. They look excellent. They look exactly like we thought they would look. And it's they travel to Wisconsin this weekend, which, maybe that's a little bit tricky, but things are looking good for them until they get to the Big Ten championship.
We mentioned Ohio State 45-0 over Purdue.
One quick thing about that is, again, Sammy, going back to when we were on Eric Boggs' podcast, the Ohio podcast, he was talking about the general conversation among Ohio State fans. And he was basically like, we've hung it on a lot of teams over the years, and we have not seen a team quit like Purdue quit in this game. And Fire Walters is permanently trending on Twitter, but Purdue is basically checked out.
Yep.
And it's just a matter of time, I think, until he's gone.
Penn State 35-6 over Washington.
Nice get right game from Penn State.
You called this too. I had a different line of thought, and you were like, no, Penn State. If it ain't Ohio State or Michigan, they clean the clock of everybody, and they absolutely did that.
Well, and this is, the playoff era. I think in a non-playoff era, like if this is last year, there's a real chance for Penn State to come into this game like wounded and licking their chops, and licking their wounds and just feeling sorry for themselves and having a letdown. But they are very much alive for the college football playoff. If not, the rest of their schedule is quite easy. They should finish 11-1, and they should be a virtual shoe-in, given how much of a blender the the SEC and the ACC are.
So I want to talk about that, and maybe we can finish running through this season, but I want to talk a little bit about the playoff, and maybe now's not the time to do it because I still don't quite understand. Big Ten can have four teams or more, or is it no more than 4? Do you know?
I don't. It is interesting. That's a good question. I'm not exactly sure.
Because as it sits right now, it's Oregon, Ohio State, Penn State, Indiana are 4 Big Ten teams which should make the playoff, right?
I have to think, like, if those 4 teams aren't going to get in, then why did you expand it to 12 teams? I'm like, they all just seem like such clear shoo-ins. I do think Penn State would probably be the odd team out, though. If there was a 4th that wasn't going to get in, I think that 4th team is Penn State, which would be ridiculous with them being at 11-1. But that is what I think would happen.
But I mean, here's the thing: that the runner-up in the ACC is going to have 2 losses. The runner-up in the Big 12 is going to have at least 2 losses. Hell, the winner of the SEC,
unless BYU,
the winner of the SEC might have a couple losses. And so,
I mean, no one's top 4 is even remotely close to the Big Ten's top 4.
That's the thing. And so I at this stage, with all 4 of them in, here are the next teams on the list. So SMU, which if they, win the ACC, they would be in. Are you going to bring in a 9-2 or a 10-2 Miami over 11-1 Penn State?
No. Not right now. I don't think so.
A&M is and I know new rankings supposedly come out today. They're not updated, or tomorrow. They're not updated.
Tomorrow,
on ESPN yet.
Tuesday.
Yeah. So A&M and LSU and Ole Miss are in slots 14 through 16. So Ole Miss is going to go up, having beaten Georgia, but now Georgia's got 2 losses. They're all but done. Alabama is in the top 12 with 2 losses, but they're going to have to play somebody again. Tennessee and Georgia are basically playing an elimination game this weekend. Like, a lot of those teams are going to fall. Purdue's going to end up 11-1. Indiana is going
Purdue.
I'm sorry, Penn State's going to end up 11-1.
Purdue is going to end up with a 1 and an 11 in their record. That's for sure.
Ohio State and Indiana play a potential elimination game, but like as long as neither one blows the other one out, I think they're probably fine. And then
you think if Ohio State beats Indiana finishes the season with 1 loss, they could see themselves out?
I guess
there's a laundry situation that we've seen year after year after year in these types of things.
I think the simplest path is that they get 4 teams in. Yeah. I think
it makes the most sense. But if there's an odd team out, it's Indiana, having gotten either smoked by Ohio State or Oregon, in their upcoming games. Now I think they're going to acquit themselves quite well against the Buckeyes, and I think they're going to go to the Big Ten championship. Well, I don't know if I'm willing to say that yet. We'll see. We'll see how these teams look this upcoming week. But point being, they could. Point being is, like, Penn State was not going to come into this whiteout home game against Washington and let down. They were going to come in angry and buzzsaw-y, and they took care of business. And I expect them to do that the rest of the way, because there's huge stakes on the line, which in years past has not been the case.
Yeah. Indiana beats Michigan 20-15.
Good for them.
Bit of a slog for Indiana, but I mean, they got it done.
Win one ugly. Why not? Right? I mean, they haven't had that happen. They were in a situation where things were not great for them down the stretch of this game. They had lost all the momentum. Michigan was getting back in. Their offense was having real trouble moving the ball. They were having trouble running the ball. Their wide receivers were dropping passes. And you got to come through a moment like that. And that's what they did. They leaned on their D and made a couple big plays.
I think they are so much better for it.
Yeah.
And like, their safety was ejected for targeting just before halftime. And I think it really changed the complexion of their run D. Michigan was able to do a lot more to move and to possess the ball. And then when Indiana would get the ball, Michigan just brought heat, and their defensive line is really good. And they made Rourke uncomfortable, and it did not take much to put Indiana on the back foot. Now that does not portend well against Ohio State's defense, but having gone through that, having to fight through that, and coming through it on the other end with the victory, I think will galvanize and teach this team so much. This is a way better outcome for Indiana in the long run than if they had won this game like 30-9. I think it is fantastic for them that they had to battle through this and dig deep, look the beast in the eye, and be like, no, we are not losing this game. We are taking this back, and they did. And I think I cannot wait to see them play the Buckeyes in 2 weeks.
And then finally, Rutgers, turns it around, knocks off Minnesota 26-19.
I put up a tweet this morning that was basically, to quote Obi-Wan Kenobi, "If you strike me down, I shall become more powerful than you can possibly imagine." And I was referring to the Big Ten West, because other than those 4 teams that are going to the playoffs, it is 14 teams in the mud pit right now.
Maybe 13 teams and Purdue, but
I
don't want to throw stones.
True, but it is, the Big Ten West has effectively grown into this giant monster as it was struck down. It has become more powerful, and your Big Ten West game of the week is a Rutgers Minnesota game that just doesn't make any sense other than that just mud pit. Rutgers has been, we thought they were so great, then they were just lost in the woods for like 2 months. And then right when we're like, this Minnesota team sure does a lot of things well. Nope, lose to Rutgers. It's like, I Who knows? I don't know. It's just a slog, man. This conference is just a slog.
Quick glance around the country. A couple big games to note. You mentioned Ole Miss beating Georgia. Big upset there. Georgia Tech knocks off Miami. That was a fun one to keep my eye on.
It's too bad that the Florida Gators are not going to get bowl eligible because if they could match up against Georgia Tech in bowl season, Tech would have a chance to own the state of Florida. That'd be amazing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, they would. They kind of felt like an all gas, no brakes team all year. And Ward is incredible and he's piling up numbers and everything. But Miami's, of all the top teams, it felt like Miami potentially was going to flirt with something like this, where the offense didn't go the way that it was supposed to.
They've been flirting with that all season long. They've been pulling games out of their butt season long.
Yeah.
Vatek has something to say about that.
Yeah.
Cal, like the whole nine. I mean, they've been their luck kind of ran out against Georgia Tech, and we'll see how they go the rest of the way. But
Yep.
Do you guys think Jalen Milroe won the Heisman on Saturday?
What?
Oh.
Wait,
I mean,
who's giving that narrative besides ESPN?
I mean, he ran for 185 yards and scored 4 touchdowns and looked like singularly incredible.
Congratulations, Travis Hunter on line 3.
I mean,
Ashton Genty on line 4.
To me, it's. I think if I was betting, I would bet on Hunter. And the reason I would bet on Hunter is because of the dumpster fire job Boise State has done marketing their guy for the Heisman.
Guys,
I've talked about this before, and I'm like, this guy has been a transcendent running back, and not one of you have a vision of any of his runs in your head right now, and that's the fault of Boise State. So again, maybe you're right. I mean, you're right. The entire ESPN SEC arm will certainly be behind Milroe. I guess I don't disagree with that.
I mean, allow me to read you the past, what is this, like 8 Heisman Trophy winners. Jaden Daniels, Caleb Williams, Bryce Young, Devonta Smith. So Devonta Smith stands out. Joe Burrow, Kyler Murray, Baker Mayfield, Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, no.
Derrick Henry won it as a running back in 2015 because he was literally untackleable, and Alabama won the national championship. Ashton Genty does not have a freaking prayer, and I'm trying to pull up the stats right now from the Colorado game. Let's see what Travis Hunter did on this day in football against Texas Tech. Travis Hunter, 9 receptions for 99 yards.
9 for 99 yards.
1 TD. And that's it. Did not record a tackle.
That
doesn't
sound like
you're right. I mean, again, this may be where we're headed.
I just like
ESPN is ESPN.
There's just not
Colorado's
enough.
I mean, Dion.
Here's what I want to see. The one you could talk me, the quarterback that I want to see win it. Bryson Daly from Army. They got 3 more games. I'm like, he threw 2 passes last game, rushed for 153 yards. That's the kind of quarterback I'm looking for. That's my quarterback. At least invite him. Invite him. Put an Army guy on the stage.
Hunter has a total of 856 yards and 9 touchdowns. He's not on the radar.
Yeah. I mean, maybe you're right. Maybe it's Milroe.
I get it that like he plays both ways. He's incredible. He's going to have some opportunities to showcase some stuff.
What were Charles Woodson's numbers when he won it over Peyton Manning?
I'm sure.
But that's a different time, man. Well,
we probably don't want to go too
Ron
deep down this
Ron Dane won it the next year. Like it's just a different time.
Let's not get too pulled down this Heisman.
No. We'll have time to revisit that as we move along. BYU comes back to beat Utah. The Mike Bajakian coached Utah Utes. BYU continues their undefeated season 22-21.
I got a shout out. Bradley Locker sent us a DM like in the middle of that game that like 3rd and 10 and Bajakian just called inside zone. We're so back. team stats. Let's see. I just can't help myself. 259 total yards, 6 of 12 on third down. 21 points. Yep.
Yeah. I guess there was some rough officiating at the end of that one, but yeah, BYU, on they go.
Bama goes to Death Valley, beats LSU pretty bad, 42-13. Softened that one a little bit. Sorry, Chris.
Yeah.
12 carries for 185 yards and 4 touchdowns. Jalen Milroe.
You're right.
I mean, he's Cam Newton reincarnate. Now that they're not going to win the national championship, but
he's probably you're right. He probably won it.
Well, I mean, 224 carries for 1,700 plus yards, 23 touchdowns, 7.7 yards a carry. Ashton Genty.
All right. On we go. We cannot talk about
this.
It ain't the LaDainian Tomlinson years, my friends.
We can continue this conversation offline. This will be fun. Kansas knocks off Iowa State. Virginia beats Pitt. Colorado over Texas Tech. What else? Anything else kind of jumping out from last week?
On to the next week.
Yeah. So coming up this week, in addition to our game in the conference, we've got some UCLA Washington on Friday night. Washington a 3.5-point home favorite. UCLA is Washington's only a 3.5-point favorite against UCLA.
I mean, UCLA.
Yeah.
Credit to him. Just Foster's doing an unbelievable job right now. All the props to him.
Not just Foster, but Eric Bieniemy as well. Garber's looked pretty good. I mean, he had a couple of turnovers in the first half, and then in the second half, they just took Iowa apart. Iowa could not stop them. And, at Washington is a tough place to play, but UCLA has been there many, many times. So,
yeah,
I think I kind of like Washington in this game. Just home field has been pretty powerful in the Big Ten this year, but UCLA is on a 3-game win streak, and 2 of those were away. So,
interesting. When we started recording, Ohio State was a 30-point favorite. It's down to 29.5.
Oh, we're reeling them in, baby.
1:30 Central on FS1. Michigan State at Illinois. Illinois only a 2.5-point home favorite.
I feel like the Sharps have had a way better feel for Illinois than the pollsters have for a long time now. And that's the thing. Illinois has not played good football for the past really month plus, and that's Michigan State again is no great shakes, and the fact that Illinois is only 2.5 points ahead of favorites again. Illinois is struggling to score 14 points a game against all teams who are not Purdue right now.
This is definitely your Big Ten West game of the week.
Oh, yeah.
It's quite possible.
Yeah. Penn State at Purdue. Penn State, a
not
28.5-point favorite. That game's on 2:30 on 2:30 on CBS.
Penn State's
that seems 28.5 seems super low.
It does.
Aller's going to throw for 350. Purdue's given up. They're not going to score in this game. Penn State's defense is going to destroy them. That seems low to me. I'm surprised that's not higher.
I am so fascinated by the 3:00 game on Fox.
1,000%.
Nebraska at USC. This is just oh my God. So USC's a 9.5-point favorite. Nebraska, after bringing in Dana Holgerson as a analyst 2 weeks ago, has just today made him their offensive coordinator. He's calling plays the rest of the way.
Nebraska's got a brand new OC. USC's got a brand new quarterback.
Yeah, yep. USC changing quarterbacks.
It's Miller Moss isn't even on the team. He's in the portal.
Hit the portal, right?
Yep.
He's F this,
yep.
I'm out.
Jaden Maeva, who transferred from UNLV, I believe.
Yeah,
is taking over, and
and through all of this, USC is a 9.5-point favorite.
The stunning thing is just how quickly Moss is all right, I'm out. I'm headed to the portal, and that is one thing I hate to see. I hate to see that. Just because, dude, you don't know what's going to happen. Right? It could not go well, and you could come in and be the hero. But
it's weird too. Like he's going into the portal with over 2,500 yards, 18 TDs, and 9 picks.
Yeah,
crazy.
But then, like Nebraska, to your point about being Nebraska's last. Here's Nebraska's games this year. They looked great against UTEP. They smoked them. And they looked really good in the first half against Colorado, 28-10 against a Colorado team that's gotten a lot better since that game. Killed Northern Iowa. Then lose at home to Illinois by 7. Only beat Purdue on the road by 18 in a game that Nebraska's offense looked really like pedestrian. A 14-7 home win against a Rutgers team that now we know is not nearly as potent as we once thought. And then 56-7 loss to Indiana, 21-17 loss to Ohio State, 27-20 loss to UCLA. This team is like when you look back at their resume, the best thing they have going for them is a 4-point loss to Ohio State.
Yeah.
The rest of it is like not inspiring at all.
And their final 3 games at USC, home for Wisconsin, at Iowa. This team,
again, it's like
they are allergic to the postseason.
This USC team is not good.
No,
and Vegas expects them to win comfortably in this game, and I'm like, yeah. I guess I can't argue.
So fascinated by this game.
Yeah.
USC has been pretty good at home.
It's a travel. It's a travel.
The only game
2 time zones.
The only game they've lost at home is the Penn State game. So they are 4-1 at home, except when they played like one of the best 12 teams in the country. And they killed Wisconsin. They killed Rutgers. I don't know. This seems reasonable to me. It just like the drama with the quarterback. It's surprising that's not 6.5 instead of 9.5.
Yeah, drama on both ends. I'm like, this is get the popcorn out.
What do we think about Dana Holgorsen? That's just like I remember when it first got announced that they brought him in. I quipped to you guys like, oh man, Dana Holgorsen and Matt Rule. It's like these 2 notoriously like stubborn dudes. Like I wonder how they're going to get along.
No idea.
Yeah,
no idea. Again,
this guy is like off the street 2 weeks ago, and now he's calling plays.
It's crazy. That's not something you do if things are working.
No. 5:00 on FS1. Rutgers at Maryland. Maryland, a 5.5 point favorite.
What? I am a touch surprised by this line. I know.
What in the hell?
Again, we're only just a week away from Rutgers being like the most like helpless team, not named Purdue, in the entire conference. But then they put together a good win. And again, Maryland they're one of the running out the clock on their coach teams right now. I don't know. I know it's at Maryland, but I think I don't know. This is another Big Ten Westy kind of game, but I don't know.
If you're just gonna take like the quarterback comparison and just kind of go from there and like throw the rest up for grabs, like Billy Edwards is unequivocally having a much better season than Ethan Kaliakmanis. And a lot of that is just simply completion percentage and yards. But I trust Edwards and his targets probably a lot more than Kaliakmanis. The problem is like, can Maryland stop Rutgers from running the ball? But then Rutgers hasn't run the ball like they should be able to run the ball. I don't know. This is another one that is a real enigma. I have no idea what's going to happen in this game.
Then 6:30 on NBC, Oregon at Wisconsin. Oregon is a 14.5 point road favorite.
Yeah, this feels like a beatdown. Wisconsin had a week off after getting drubbed by Iowa, but the only thing that's happened in that week is that Jack Del Rio has resigned.
About to say. Yeah, I was going to say just that not everyone in that program used their week off constructively. Let's put it that way. Oregon hasn't been the team this season that is handing out titanic beatdowns to everybody. So I guess I see that 14.5.
Just sizable beatdowns, not titanic.
Yeah, I just don't think they're ever going to be threatened here. They're coming out to Wisconsin. I think they're still going to handle them.
Yeah.
Michigan off this week. So, This is so interesting, and we can talk about this more next week. But John, you brought up the point that if
we're their path to a bowl.
Yeah, like they need to beat us to go to a bowl game. We can keep Michigan from the defending national champions. If we go to Ann Arbor and win, they're not going bowling.
Yep. It's hard not to look past this week to that. It's just there's so much meat on the bone for us next week. And that's something, for anything that happens this week, just keep focused on that.
Well, hold on now. What's their APR?
Not as good as ours.
Oh, no, not as good as ours, but let's see.
There's never more than like one or two.
Scuzz, you don't need to be killing anyone's dream that we're knocking Michigan out of the bowl. Come on. Come on, Debbie Downer. Let's go.
I just want to call a spade a spade. They are tied for third. Big Ten APR rankings, Ohio State number 1. What? Oh man!
Wait, what?
I don't know. That seems
no.
Seems
They're not. This is. Don't listen to Scuzz. We're gonna knock Michigan out of a bowl. That's what's happening in 2 weeks. But yeah. Anyway, but they are off, I guess.
Looking elsewhere around the country, Clemson Pitt could be interesting. Pitt's kind of reeling a little bit, but Clemson is a 10-point road favorite.
Alabama, super important matchup with Mercer. It's a super.
Colorado, Utah. I mean, that's where Big Noon Sunday is in Boulder for Colorado, Utah.
This feels like it's going to be lopsided. There's not a lot of good games this week.
No. If Travis Hunter
which is always where the funny ones come out.
Right. Tennessee, Georgia is.
Yeah.
Which neither of them.
Kansas knocked off Iowa State, and now they get to go to BYU. But Kansas is a mess this year.
Do you see what the line is for that?
Yeah.
BYU -3.
Yeah.
That's pretty interesting.
That's pretty tight.
Yeah.
For a team that's 9-0 versus a team that's 3-6, and the 9-0 team is at home. At altitude, that's weird.
Very strange.
That feels like a Vegas knows something situation.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, seriously,
it's very weird,
very odd.
I would love it because the more losses that other conferences pile up, the more likely it is that we get Indiana in the college football playoff, and I desperately want that to happen.
Yeah. Yeah, just it's always the weeks where there's nothing that really jumps off the page, that the weird stuff happens.
So you're telling me there's a chance?
May there be some weird shit at Wrigley Field.
I'm just saying, Wrigley can be weird. It can be weird.
We have seen with our own eyes some weird shit at Wrigley Field.
We have seen some weird shit at Wrigley Field. Oh yeah,
true.
I was there for the corked bat game.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah. That Marlins series, I was there for one of those games. Fuck, man. Some weird shit.
Absolutely. Anything else to hit before we get out of here tonight, guys?
Just, again, a big weekend. I know, obviously, it's homecoming, and obviously, end zone tailgate at the Cubby Bear sounds like that's kind of going to be the epicenter of where everything's going to be going down. But don't forget, back at campus, 2 massive field hockey games, Friday and hopefully Sunday as well. And that Sunday one, again, may be the rubber match with Michigan. So big weekend for Northwestern field hockey. And let's still be talking about their tourney run when we reconvene next week.
Absolutely. So with that, we'll go ahead and leave it there for tonight. Head to our website, westlawpirates.com, where you can leave comments and questions. Find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube at Westlaw Pirates, and email the show, westlawpirates@gmail.com. Tune in next time as we give our visceral and statistical views on Northwestern athletics, and look for us in the Cubby Bear flying the red pirate flag, because we give no quarter, especially the fourth. For John Lacombe and Eric Scasbo, I'm Sam Walter. Thanks so much for listening. We'll see you next time.